Okay, yeah, very nice. So we're gonna end this video with a little bit of fun talking about Iranian sports. But before that, I just wanted to touch on major Iranian industries. So very quickly, of course, there's the oil industry, gas,
Iran is
gas,
actually
or
oil
no,
and
not
gas. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, oil
yeah.
and gas.
Iran actually has the second largest reserves of gas in the world, I think. And according to Wikipedia and some other sources, it makes it a energy superpower. And Iran is still on the way to being industrialized, although it's not clear if that's the best solution for Iran because of lack of raw materials in some ways. But Iran is, yeah, petrochemical industry is massive in Iran. Oil industry is massive in Iran. Agriculture is quite big in Iran. It's got 17% of the labor is working in
But that's
agriculture.
interesting that the agriculture is big, even though you mentioned that what, like 10% of the land
Is arable.
is arable.
Well, you got to realize that, yeah, but Iran is what? Iran is
Huge.
5 times, 4 times the size of UK, but because it's covered by deserts, the population is the same, right?
Hmm.
So, like, the market is also smaller.
Which I
Uh,
mean, the desert stuff. I mean, I mean, I haven't gone to many places in Iran, but exactly if you're in Tehran and if you then go to the north or other places, I mean, you'd have no idea that there are like large swaths of desert.
oh, well, I've traveled to the desert parts as well, but what you have there is, for example, you have Yazd, and then miles and miles and miles and miles and miles away another city, right?
Mm.
It's not like north or Tehran that when you drive you basically see continuous settlement, so
Yeah, yeah,
population shrinks significantly. And so
yeah.
Iran, yeah,
So agriculture.
petrochemical and oil are definitely on top. Iran does have a relatively good car industry. It's the fifth in terms of growth, I believe, this year. They 60% of the market is controlled by a sort of semi-national company called Iran Khodro. To be honest, I don't think they haven't been able to make engines of good quality yet. What they do is largely they make the body in Iran and they buy different engines from different Korean, Chinese manufacturers and they put it in there. They have quite a good and a strong pharmaceutical industry, a strong in nanotechnology. They are very good. They're very much ahead, top five or something. Very strong defense or arm industry, to be honest, especially in terms of like small arms productions, small missiles, that type of thing. Not so much in terms of obviously like hardcore airplanes or that type of thing. So it's quite a varied, not varied enough. It's still too much dependent on oil and gas, but it's changing. And the service industry is huge. Most people are, to be honest, working within the service industry, so that shouldn't be forgotten, for sure. But yeah, these are the major industries in Iran. I would say like oil and gas, agriculture, car industry, and related fields. Uh, Service industry and arm industry, and to an extent, pharmaceutical. I think I mentioned pharmaceutical
Yeah,
industries, right?
yeah, you did, and that was
So
a good shout with the service industry. It's kind of something that you forget, and maybe it's a product of the times, but that's
yeah,
huge in Iran. You're so
yeah,
right. And just on the automobile, I wanted to add something. It's interesting in Iran, like the way they go about automobiles, because like it's as if like they buy. I mean, this is one way they have like ownership over this one model of, let's say, like a Peugeot, which exists in France, which exists in France and is made, but they kind of have like ownership over it too,
they,
and just build
I
it in
guess
Iran and build different versions of it in Iran,
they
sometimes for like decades. So
what I've
it's
heard
kind of funny.
what I've heard them say is that they are licensed to reproduce that
Yeah,
brand or
exactly.
something. So that's yeah what they do, and yeah, that's a very, yeah, car industry in Iran is a big one. It's a huge one.
Yeah, and then just the number of
And
cars. I mean, it must be insane.
oh yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's great. But you in Tehran and other major cities, you do see a lot of foreign cars as well,
Mm.
especially in places like north and south where you have these free trade zone areas where you can bring a foreign cars without paying the
Yeah.
taxes, which
And I
are
mean, Iran, that's the
massive in
thing,
Iran.
right? Yeah. So if there's a
Yeah.
car that they're not producing themselves, sometimes the tax is the exact price of the car. So it's as if you're buying the
Yeah,
car
or more,
twice.
or
Yeah.
100%, 200%. Yeah, car industry is very much protected in Iran by the government and all that through the taxation. Yeah, I would say these are. There is a worth mentioning. Iran has an interesting mining sector. Iran has, by the way, the steel and copper industries are big as well. Iran has a potentially. Iran is one of the most mineral-rich countries in the world, kind of like Afghanistan. But sadly, there hasn't been investment, or there hasn't been the infrastructure, and there has been too much roadblocks on the road for that industry to develop. But that's the industry that could be a game changer for Iran, and yeah, it's interesting to see if anything comes out of that.